Welcome to Data Access Golf, your home for rapid golf improvement. And now, from the thin air of the Rocky Mountains, next on the number one tee, your host, Aaron Stewart.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Data Access Golf. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all the new listeners. This is getting fun. This is getting exciting. It's nice to have comments and questions and stuff to discuss. You know, you launch a podcast and you think, my word, I'm going to do about 10 and be out of ideas. But so far, things are kind of rolling in, and I've been kind of keeping a list of different questions and comments that people have been leaving, and it's really cool. I've got, I was just looking over, I've got 2 full pages now of topics to touch on and think about. And this particular podcast is about, if you read the title, Unrealistic Expectations. And I like this topic a lot. There's, I don't know what it is about. Golf is a very difficult game. And because there's so much that we have to sort of figure out for ourselves that we really can't be taught, that we really have to experience, it can be very frustrating when we don't improve as quickly as we do in other activities in our lives. Most other activities in our lives. I really don't know, and I've thought for a long time to try to come up with a different physical activity that is as difficult to master as golf. And I haven't come up with one yet. If somebody smarter than me has something, then I'd be interested to hear about that, but and to discuss it with you. But so yeah, golf's difficult to learn, and yet, we amateur golfers, we don't have a lot of time to practice. We're, we go to work, we have families, we have social lives, we've just got really busy lives. It doesn't matter really what you do. Our lives are busy, and they're getting busier. And so this idea that we have all this time to practice and get really, really good at something, that's not a very realistic expectation. The reality is that we really don't have a lot of time, so we've got to make sure that our practice is efficient and that we're working on the right things in order for our game to get better. And that's part of the reason that Data Access Golf exists, is to hopefully teach a lot of us how to practice more efficiently so we can get better, knowing full well that we have less time. So using data and tools to help us do that. But then kind of the other side of all this is that we kind of have to give ourselves a break. We're not professional golfers, so we don't have agents and a masseuse and personal trainer and everything else that goes along with being a professional golfer, and the opportunity to play all day every day and to practice 6 hours a day and to hop on a private jet and go wherever it is. And I realize the generation now is different than previous generations, but even then we just don't have access to that amount of time to practice golf as much as you probably need to without proper feedback to get better. And yet when we get on the golf course, we seem to expect ourselves to be, if you have a particularly good round one week and then you come back 2 weeks later, you expect to play at that same level, which is unrealistic because you kind of got lucky that week. Our swings are such complicated movements, and there's so much going on that every once in a while our timing will be on and we'll kind of go out there and perform really well, but we have no idea why we're performing well, and we're not doing a movement that can be replicated. I discussed in a previous podcast that even from day to day, my swing changes so much that when I see the data, I used to be super freaked out the next day because the swing felt the same as it did the day before, and yet the data was telling me that it was completely a different swing, that it was off by sometimes quite a bit. And so you have to, I guess, sort of find it every time you go to the course, unless you can kind of get to a place where you have taught yourself what, a good golf swing is, right? And you understand that and you incorporate it and it becomes part of you, then you can expect some consistency. But until then, to expect consistency when you don't have proper feedback and don't have a good way to learn seems ridiculous to me. And then to take it further than that, we sometimes believe that we're better than we are, and we sometimes believe that somehow or another we should be scoring better than we are. And I'll kind of give an example. And I talk about this a lot with my kids because they boy, they can get frustrated really quickly when they don't perform up to their expectations. And frankly, their expectations are ridiculous. They can't expect to be that good when they're this young and they don't practice as much as they probably should be. And yet they do. They have these expectations. And so, anyway, I wanted to kind of talk about some of the averages that we have on tour and talk about it. We talk about, let's just go as far as like an approach shot. So from 100 to 125 yards, that seems to be where I see most people get upset. You get 100 yards and you've got a wedge in your hands, and it's usually, a pitching wedge or down, right? Maybe a 56 degree. And you seem to think, hey, I'm 100 to 120 yards out, whatever. I'm in the middle of the fairway. There's the green. I am going to hit this thing and birdie this hole, right? That's our thought process. It's 100 yards. I mean, how hard can that be? Well, it turns out it's pretty hard. I mean, the average on the PGA Tour from 125 yards, from 100 yards was 20 feet, a 20-foot putt, right? And so then you say, okay, a 20-foot putt. How many of those 20-foot putts do you expect to make? Well, the average on tour was less than 20%. It was 18%, right? So what in the world are we doing here? We expect to make, somehow or another, we expect to perform at a higher level than a touring pro. We expect somehow or another from 100 yards to put it closer than 20 feet every time. And if we're not, we get upset. Managing expectations like that, I think, is important. Getting upset on the golf course is a disaster. It's terrible. Mentally sort of losing yourself in a negative way on the golf course is it's horrible for performance. We really have to kind of stay positive and optimistic, and so these unreal expectations have to be managed. So from 100 yards, please, if you have a shot from 100 yards and you put it to 20 feet, would you please celebrate that? Because it was fantastic. You just performed like an average tour pro. That's amazing. We should be really amazed with shots like that. And if it happens to be inside 20 feet, mercy. I mean, wow. Really congratulate yourself because you just hit a tour quality shot. And if it happens to be outside of 20 feet, 30, 40 feet, give yourself a break. You're not a tour player. You hit the green, pat yourself on the back, and go try to make that putt. Now, let's go a 20-foot putt, right? 18%. And I have seen people miss 20-footers and just freak out like they should have made it. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? You only make 1 of 5 of those. Less than 1 out of 5. What are you talking about? 4 out of 5 times you're missing that putt. Well, you have no right to be upset. It's preposterous to be upset. You look like an idiot when you're upset at missing a 20-footer. You're not supposed to make it. Odds are against you. The data is against you. You are not making that putt but 1 out of 5 times. If you're an average tour pro, we're not. So what do we make it out? 1 out of 10? 2 out of 10? Right? I mean, we should be okay with that? I'm sorry. 1 out of 10? 2 out of 10 is tour average. So it would be less than 2 out of 10, right? So let's say we make 1 out of 10. Maybe that should be what we're looking to do. Maybe we're trying to, let's improve 1 out of 10. From 20 feet, we should expect to make 1 out of 10. If we make 2 out of 10, we're tour quality. Can we just be happy with that and move on and try to get better? And the last thing I wanted to throw out here that I thought was super, super interesting. 10-footers, I don't know what it is, but everybody who has a 10-footer expects to make it. Everybody I play with. And when they don't, they're like majorly disappointed. Okay, tour average. Tour average of a 10-footer, any guesses out there? 41%. 2 out of 5. Right? I mean, come on, folks. So if you miss a 10-footer, chances are you were going to miss a 10-footer. Right? There was only a 59% chance. There was a 59% chance you weren't going to make it. There was only a 41% chance you would make it if you're the average tour pro. The worst on the PGA Tour, which I thought was fascinating last year, from 10 feet, 19%. Right? Just as bad as the tour average from 20 feet. I don't know. I don't remember the name, but brutal. So I think we need to give ourselves a break. We're on the green. If we have a 10-footer, chances are we're not going to make it. Right? Chances are we aren't. We're not tour players. We're not going to make 41%. Are we going to make 30%? Are we going to make 20%? That's probably more realistic. And so we just need to keep ourselves in check and not get too emotional when we miss a 10-footer, because chances are we were going to miss a 10-footer, and chances are even better we're going to miss a 20-footer, and chances are, as far as from 100 yards and 125 yards out, chances are pretty good it's not going inside 20 feet, right? That's tour average. So anyway, those sorts of stats I think can kind of help us. That's where data can kind of help us develop realistic expectations. So take it easy on yourselves. If you have 100 and 125 yards in, great. Expect that to be 30 feet away from the hole, 40 feet away from the hole. We are not tour pros. Let's not act like it. It's just not very good for our mood, for our emotional state. It's not very good for golf performance. Let's just accept it for what it is. The data is pretty solid on all of this. We're not tour pros. We never will be tour pros. So let's develop expectations that fit that. And I guess kind of the last thing I would like to say on all of this is, now we have, if we can set proper goals and set proper expectations, then we can work to actually get better, and we can achieve getting better. But if we set our goals at, say, hey, from 100 yards, I want to be inside 20 feet every single time, we're not going to perform to that level. And so that type of goal becomes unrealistic and impossible to accomplish. So let's not set goals like that. Let's come up with an average that works and try to get better than that. And that goes into sort of tracking what we actually do and just trying to get better from how we are actually performing now. Let's try to get better than ourselves right now and not worry about everything else. And we've got some really cool worksheets and things that we'll work on to do that when we move into spring. That will really be helpful to sort of develop proper expectations so we can set goals and then try to achieve to get better than those goals and see market improvement, as opposed to setting unrealistic expectations for ourselves and just being ticked off all the time. So anyway, that is it for this podcast. Appreciate you joining in. Please keep realistic expectations, not only in golf, but in all aspects of your life. It just becomes a better way to live. And until next time, please remember, with better data and better expectations comes better golf. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Data Access Golf with Aaron Stewart. Check us out online at dataaccessgolf.com, and we'll see you on the next episode.